welcome to Two Boomer Women. I'm your host, Agnes Knowles. I've been talking with Boomer women for almost a decade now. Well, I guess I've been talking to Boomer women all my adult life. Reinventing myself several times along the way, though, but always focused on us, Boomer women. With this incarnation of Two Boomer Women, I'll be interviewing other women who have a message of interest for our demographic. If you want to hear about or learn about something specific, let me know and I'll find someone who understands us to talk about it. There's a contact page at twoboomerwomen.com. If you want to be a guest on Two Boomer Women, bring it on. There's an application form at the website too. Finally, this show is all about conversation. We women know its value. We know how to do it, and we must perpetuate the art form. So let's get started with today's show. Welcome to the Two Boomer Women podcast. I'm your host, Agnes Knowles. As we begin to wrap up a second year of amazing guests on this podcast, I love remembering the variety of people I've talked with and all the subjects we've discussed. And 95% of those guests were chosen with you, listener, in mind. You are as varied as my guests, so the sky is pretty much the limit. Today, however, this episode, is for me. I have had a fascination with El Camino de Santiago for a lot of years. Also known as the Way of St. James, it's a pilgrimage with a series of routes, all of which end at the city of Santiago de Compostela in northern Spain. My guest today started her treks on the Caminos at age 70. She is my new hero, and I can't wait to hear about her motivation, her adventures, her spiritual journey, anything at all she's willing to share. Kathleen Donnelly Israel, welcome to the Two Boomer Women podcast.
Oh, thank you, Agnes. I'm so happy to be here.
You know, as much as I want to dive right in, I'm going to start at the beginning. You cared for your husband through his Parkinson's journey for 17 years. He passed in 2018, and you walked your first Camino in 2019.
Right.
Can you share that transition from caregiver to pilgrim, please? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, so when Ron got sick, I had ideas of what we would do in our old age. Because he was an athlete, and I always tried to do things that he liked to do. And so I thought, well, we'll ride our bicycles across France, we'll have a good time. And then he got Parkinson's disease, and I thought, well, gee, I guess we're not going to be doing that. And so I guess I had a little grief going, losing my dream there. And in 2013, when I was in the throes of really caring for him, he was, totally disabled, 2013. And my friend Judy went on the Camino, and I guess I heard of it, that movie, The Way. But I wasn't very impressed with it because it just seemed kind of silly. And but when Judy did it, I thought, wow, I just recognized she was doing something really special for herself. And I thought, you know what, when Ron's done with his disease, I'm gonna walk the Camino. And so that's why I did it. And when Ron died in 2018, I had so much to do with the funeral and the grave and the insurance and the bank and, all this stuff. I had a bag and I had everything in it. And so, the death notices, everybody seemed to want a death notice. And so I carried that bag around with everything in it. So I could just actually do whatever I needed to do when I needed to do it. But by January, I was done with all that stuff. And I thought, well, if you're going to go on the Camino, you better get ready. The reason why I knew I could do it is because me and my girlfriend Severa, we walked down by the bay in San Diego 3 times a week, and we walked 5 miles. And I didn't even break a sweat. I can walk 5 miles. And I just thought, well, I'll walk 5 miles before lunch and 5 miles after lunch, and it'll be good. I can do this. And so I was still doing that. And like the preparation was mainly like, what am I going to take with me? And where am I going to stay, stuff like that. And my sister-in-law, I just couldn't believe how, I mean, she told me, okay, Kathleen, you're walking by the bay, but you need to walk mountains because, and so she took me out and she found all the mountains in San Diego and we hiked up them. And that was just so kind of her to do that for me. And then I went to like a lecture at the library, and the lecture was how to pack light for the Camino, and the room was full, but I was the only one that raised my hand when she said, "How many of you are going to walk the Camino?" I guess everybody else was just interested in how can I pack lightly, you know. So anyway, she gave me a lot of good tips, told me where to stay on the first 3 nights, and she would like hold. She brought 2 shirts, and she'd say, "Okay, here's a T-shirt. Now, this is a T-shirt you could take with you." And so when you take two T-shirts and one of them is very lightweight, you know there's a difference between what you should take with you and what's just in your, closet. Anyway, that's what I did. I just went online and I put in sun protection shirt, lightweight, and then my size, and then I would just find all the clothes that I needed in that way.
How did you choose which Camino to walk the first time?
Well, my friend Judy actually started in Lyon and walked to Santiago on the French way. And I just thought the French way was, I think it is, I mean, I think it's the most beautiful one, but I could be wrong. There's one up in France. It's called Les Puys or something like that. And that's supposed to be really amazing, but really difficult. But it just seemed like the French way was the traditional way. And so I wanted to walk the French way.
Okay. Now, you walked alone. Was that a hard decision? Like, did you ever feel unsafe?
Not me. I have 4 guardian angels that I know personally, and I brought them with me. And so I wasn't afraid. I read a lot, and a lot of people go alone. And there was no recommendation as to, the danger or anything. And also there's a Facebook page called Camigas, and you can, you can just sign up, and then people are all over the world belong to that. And so you can, if you're like lost or something, you can go on. And one time I was kind of like, I didn't know which way to go. Seemed like each way that I should go had a sign that said, "Don't go this way." And so I just took a bunch of pictures of where I was and put it on Facebook on the Camigas page. And right away, somebody came back, "Oh, yeah, I know where you are. And just go in the middle, go straight ahead. Don't turn right or left or anything." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So somebody was watching,
Yeah. Do you ever find people to walk with on either the website or along the way?
Yeah, along the way. One time I got into this albergue, and the people there were 3 people in the room and there were 2 bunk beds. So I was the new person, and they had been there too many days, I guess. You're not supposed to stay more than one day in the albergues, but they had somehow not left. And so they were leaving the next day, and I was leaving the next day, and we just struck out together in the morning and walked together. So that was really nice. And it's just like so I got into like this monastery, and I went, you walk in and then they stamp your pilgrim passport. So you have a stamp from each place you stay, plus they look at your regular passport and write you down for the government. And he took me in this room, and there were 3 people in there, and he said, I was like, "Well, which bed should I have?" There was stuff on all the beds, and he said, "Oh, they've been here too long. Just take the stuff off of whichever bed you want, and that's your bed." And so I did, and I put my stuff down and I just fell asleep. And when I got back, when I woke up, they were back. And I was like, ooh, kind of sheepish, like, oh, I hope I didn't take the wrong bunk or something, But anyway, they were very nice. And I said, well, do you guys want to do some laundry? Because that's what people do. If you just have a few things with you. So you got to wash often. And so they said, yeah, let's do laundry. So we all stuck our stuff in the washing machine and everybody put in €1 and, then I went and took a shower and I came out to the patio afterwards and they were sitting there eating lunch together and with two other people. And I guess one of the ladies had made this salad and they didn't finish the salad. So they said, here, come on. And somebody gave me their plate that they had already eaten on. And I was like, oh. And then somebody had a clean fork and they said, here. And so they gave me the rest of their salad and I had lunch with them. And that was so sweet. And then I said, oh, it's time to hang up the clothes maybe. And the guy, Luke said, oh, I already hung them up. And so I was so surprised. And it was so funny because he kind of sheepishly said to me, yeah, I hung them up. They're upstairs. I have to admit that when I hung up your bra, I got a thrill. So he was just so funny. Everything he said was just darling. He was from Ireland.
I'm sure there gets to be quite a camaraderie
Yes.
on the Camino as you're all sort of doing the same thing in the same direction.
Yeah, the guy in the bunk above mine was from England, and the other guy was from Ireland, and then there was another lady from Germany, and the lady that made the salad was from Australia, and there was a lady from Canada too. So we were, from everywhere. We were, it was lovely.
Makes conversation interesting, I'm sure, because I'm sure
Yeah,
everybody came with their own purpose, their own reasons.
right. The reason why they came.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any other reasons as such, or just because that your friend made it sound like something that you wanted to do?
I guess, well, I am Catholic, and the pilgrimage is a Catholic pilgrimage, even though only like 1/3 of the people are doing a spiritual journey. So it's not like exclusive for Catholics or anything, but I really love my faith. And so it just made me feel really good to be doing that. Also, you know, our home, all half the stuff in our house belonged to my husband. And whereas it was really easy for me to get rid of the stuff that had to do with his disease, all the wheelchairs and all that stuff, I asked my brother-in-law if he would donate them for me. And then, but I still had all of Ron's stuff, his clothes, his camera equipment, stuff. And it was really good for me to get away from all that stuff because I was trying to get rid of stuff and it, whereas I felt like I needed to get rid of it, it hurt me to get rid of it too. There was some grief in letting go too. So it was good for me to get away in that way. Also, when Ron and I got married, I mean, I was 20. I went straight from my mother's house to his house. And even though we were both young, he was 22, I was 20. It wasn't like I was going to another adult's house or something, but I wasn't alone. And so it was really good for me to go on the pilgrimage to just know that I can take care of myself. I can find myself food. I can keep myself safe. So it was that.
Did you get to know Kathleen as a solo person as opposed to part of a
Yeah.
couple?
Yeah, I think so. Just it was a big honoring myself situation. Like I was honoring myself. I was treating myself. Like I raised 5 kids and I was pretty much a self-sacrificing person. My mother taught me to be self-sacrificing. It's just like that's how it was at our house. I was the oldest girl of six kids, and it's definitely self-sacrifice was expected of me in my life. And so this was totally for me. It was,
That's an excellent message because so many of my guests really emphasize that in midlife, women have had a history of being somebody other than just themselves, whether they've
right.
been a wife or a mother or a caregiver or whatever. And, they always put themselves on the back burner. But at this stage of the game, the children are grown. In your case, your spouse had passed.
Mhm.
And to sort of bring yourself to the front burner and say, okay, it's my time.
Yeah, it was a total treat for me. Totally. And it was so beautiful. Like the scenery was just beautiful and the monasteries and the art. Oh my gosh. I'm an artist. I have a degree in art, and so of course I studied the art, and plus my religion. I've been looking at Catholic art all my life from day one, and so it was thrilling. I remember I went into this one monastery and they had a bunch of statues, and there was this statue of baby Jesus. He didn't have any shoes on. He was standing up and he had this big grin on his face, and he had his hand up like he was going to bless people, but it was just like, oh my God. And his clothes were totally gold. It was I couldn't believe it. Um, it was beautiful.
It's a real treat to just watch your face as you're remembering all this because yeah,
Mm.
it really comes through that it was a special, special trip. Now you did two Caminos though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I did the Portuguese one last year. So when I did the French way, it was before COVID. It was right before COVID. And then last year, COVID was still happening, but I wanted to go anyway. And so, and I wanted to go from Lisbon. To go over to Europe for a person in Southern California, it's quite a ways and the ticket is quite pricey. And I didn't want to just go over there for a few weeks. I wanted to do it. I wanted to be there for more than a month. So I think I was on the French way for 66 days. Um, but I had some illnesses and stuff. So, while along the way, but the Portuguese way, I went all the way to Santiago, and then I kept going to Finisterre, the whole thing was like 45 days.
Wow.
So, but it was almost exactly the same amount of mile, kilometers,
Distance, yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Did one feel more, I don't know if it's spiritual, would that be the right word?
Yeah, well, the French way was really great. Doing the Portuguese way during COVID was difficult because a lot of the albergues were closed, and I had to maybe the next albergue would be 35 miles away or 35, and I can't walk that far in one day. And so I would have to walk and then take a bus back to the previous albergue and sleep there and then go in the morning to where got the bus and then walk to the next albergue. So it wasn't that much fun because there was a lot of backtracking, and whereas the the French way was just like there was no impediment. It was just progress. Each day was progress, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So anyway,
No, it's interesting because it's those little things too that you go like, oh, never thought of that.
yeah,
So
yeah. It I think maybe next year more albergues will be open.
now
But
I noticed online that there are some like self-guided tours. So I guess you're probably on your own time, but there's places to stay. Are they the same? Now, these are called albergues, is it?
yeah, yeah, the albergues.
Is it the same type of place, or would that be sort of a little bit higher end hotel, like the self-guided
The
tours?
hotels are higher end,
Oh, okay.
and they're more expensive. you can go. That's why I ended up taking the bus back because I didn't want to pay $100 a night for a hotel. I could have, but I didn't want to do that. So the albergues are like, 5 to 12 euros. Um,
So
and
significantly different. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and they have like a kitchen, and you can buy food and cook in the kitchen, or like every town is different. Like if there's you go into a town, and if there are restaurants, then they'll say, okay, we'll go to this restaurant and get a pilgrim meal, and maybe you can get dinner for 12 euros, as a pilgrim meal. If there's a grocery store, a lot of times they have a kitchen with pots and pans and dishes and everything, and you can just take your food and cook it and eat it. Or and then if there isn't a restaurant or a store in town, then they provide the food, and you just have to pay them for dinner. So every town's different, and like the albergues are run by, like, some of them are run by churches, some are run by, there's a lot of them that are called municipal albergue, and they're put on by the town. And then there's independent, like somebody's using their house, and it's an albergue, and it's very cheap too. And you can, like, I went to this one house, and it, like, in some rooms there were six bunk beds, or three bunk beds, six bunks, and some of them were two bunk beds, four bunks. And so if you stay in the four bunk bedroom, then it's more expensive than the six bunk bedroom. And so it was, you know, whatever, however they figure out they're going to do it, that's how they do it. So, and I tell you, it was just really lovely for me to just go in, see what the situation is, and just make do with everything that was available. I didn't have any problem with wishing things were different at all, because everything was just interesting.
Well, it sounds like it's relatively, oh no, I won't say it's relatively easy. It sounds like it's not too difficult to be self-sufficient,
Yeah.
but after 50 years of marriage almost,
The
you had always been half of a partnership.
couple, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, it sounds like, and if you've had the kids and everything else, you never really were just all on your own self-sufficient. So proving something else to yourself there too, I'm sure was very rewarding.
Yeah, it was great. And I must tell you that I was not totally healed from my grief or anything when I was done with the Camino. I still had, I still had sadness and stuff, but it was part of the, I want to say, amelioration of my grief. It was part of it, going on the Camino.
Part, part of a process too, I'm sure.
Yeah. And the other thing is, while Ron was ill, I studied online with a bunch of enlightened thought leaders, and for years and years, I had a lot of trauma from my childhood. My father was an alcoholic, rageaholic child molester, and it was, I had a difficult childhood. And so I had, the pain from that, that stuck with me. And just being home with Ron, I had to be there, and just going online and listening to all these thought leaders. I got some healing done, and I learned some stuff that I could share with people. So I felt really good about being able to share those things with the people on the Camino. We'd sit down and talk, and, oh, why did you come on the Camino? And then they would say, and I would say, and they would say, and then I maybe share the Ho'oponopono with them, which was one of my big breakthroughs, was the Ho'oponopono. Um, and anyway, it was great to meet people, find out their story, share my healing with them. It was great for me.
Now, you've told us about the Irish fellow hanging up your bra.
Yeah.
Were there any other people that really stuck with you in memory, like in your memories, that you encountered along the way?
Yeah, there was well, I have to tell you, the first night, um, I met a bunch of people the first night. And it wasn't the first night, it was the second night because the first night was in Saint Jean Pied de Port where the Camino starts. And then we were we were not able to go over the Pyrenees because there was snow on the Pyrenees. It was against the law to go there. So we had to walk around. So we all ended up at oh, I forget. I forget the name of the place. Val Carlos. Yeah, it was Val Carlos. And so we were all there, kind of sad we didn't get to go over the Pyrenees, but this is what you have to do. And I met this guy from LA actually, just right up up the freeway from San Diego, and he had lost three of his friends had died in rapid succession, and he was not able to do his life anymore. And somebody suggested he go on the Camino, and so it was just really great. I was able to share my loss. Actually, my husband died in August, and my mother died in December of 2018. So I had a couple of losses there, big ones. And so I felt like we had something really in common. And it just so happened that he turned up every once in a while. We'd be in the same albergue. We're walking independently, but we'd end up at the same place. And that was lovely. Um, so, and the, the, so that first albergue that we stayed at, we made a WhatsApp for the people in the group. And so we still talk to each other. We can contact each other and like we'll share, oh, this is what my Christmas tree looks like this year type of thing, with each other. And so it's just really lovely. There's a lady from Holland, a guy from Germany. There's a man and a woman who are brother and sister in Canada. And yeah, the guy in LA, and there was a lady in LA too, that she was there too. So it's just lovely. We have that. We don't have to never see each other again.
Yeah. The advantages of technology, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, is English the universal language we believe it to be then? Or do you speak other languages?
I live in San Diego right next to Mexico. So I took Spanish in high school, 2 years in high school, 1 year in college, and you'd think I would speak it better. But anyway, I can get by. I can, ask people, quiero una cama para esta noche, type of thing. Can I have a bed tonight? So I can contact, but you know what is really funny is I speak Spanish pretty good if nobody speaks English. But if people speak English, my brain gets really lazy and I just can't even do it. So there was one guy I met, and I teach breathing. That's another thing. I teach breathing, and he was an athlete. He actually looked a lot like my husband, and he was an athlete, and he was telling me he was having difficulty with shortness of breath on the Camino. So I told him how to breathe in his belly, and he said, "Well, every time I run, I hold my belly tight so I can run to be strong." And I said, "Well, if you wanna run, you need to breathe in your belly, if you don't want to be short of breath." So he was so glad that I taught him how to breathe properly that he wanted to help me speak Spanish. And there I was, couldn't wait to talk to somebody. I was just like loving talking to people. And he wanted me to speak in Spanish. And I was just like, oh, the words, I was, anyway, it was pretty funny. And he was just trying to do me a good turn like I had done him. and he was making me crazy.
That's funny. Now you talked about not being able to go over the Pyrenees. Tell us about
Yeah,
the land on either of the Caminos. Like, was it pretty spectacular or?
yeah. And you can think of uh, yeah, Portugal is more like Southern California. It's kind of dry. It is, there is some beauty in the, I like green. I don't know. Maybe some people like the desert. I am a person who likes to look at green stuff. And so the northern Spain is more like the Pacific Northwest. So it's like, or even Canada, it's more rainy and everything's green and beautiful. So I really liked that. Whereas going from Lisbon, it was more like here in San Diego. It was more dry.
Yeah.
And so, but it was beautiful. I mean, I got into some really beautiful situations walking out in the hills and stuff. Mm.
Oh, that's great. How about adventures? I mean, did anything turn up unexpectedly that turned into an adventure?
Well, yes, I have to tell you, I was walking out in the middle of nowhere on the French Way, and I came up to this beautiful um, ruins of a convent. I mean, it was just out in the middle of nowhere. And when I walked up to it, it had beautiful spires and archways. And I mean, some of the walls had fallen down, but you could tell it was a beautiful convent. And I just walked in under the one of the arches, and I heard this Irish fairy music. I mean, with harps and flutes and stuff, and I was just like, whoa, this is really, whoa. And then when I walked in, I looked over to the right, and there was this guy, this Filipino guy with a white t-shirt and a kilt, a green and red plaid kilt, and he was making egg salad sandwiches and putting them in little baggies so he could sell them. And it was just like, where am I? It was just like totally unglued. And so my thing was I'm always looking for a bathroom. And so I said, do you have a bathroom? And he pointed over to this trailer. And so I went over there and used the bathroom. And it was just like, you go into the bathroom and you can actually see people walking outside because it's not really very secure. But anyway, I was just glad to have a toilet to sit on, I guess. Um, and then I came out and I went over and I got a cup of coffee. He was making coffee too. And then I left, but it was just like, are you kidding me? This is so amazing. And I loved it. It was a wonderful memory.
It sounds like you throw all expectations out the window and it's just you take every moment for what it brings.
Yeah, yeah, and you never know what's around the next corner. It was beautiful. I was walking in this area. You could see far away under the trees, but the trees were all tall and they had yellow leaves. And it was like you were in a room with a yellow ceiling type of thing. The leaves were very small and yellow, and it was just soft. And I turned this corner, and there, right in front of me, was this giant living room outside. They had really amazing furniture. Like they had like this fuchsia couch with a black and white back on it, and like purple furniture and coffee tables and tables to sit at. And it was just like a living room out in the middle of, you know, the nature. And there was a trailer there, and some guy had his Coleman stove out there, and he was making hamburgers. And so I walked up and I said, "Well, can I get a hamburger?" And so he went in and got me a hamburger out of his refrigerator and started cooking it. I think he gave me one of the ones he was already cooking. And so I had this hamburger, and I was really kind of sick at the time, and I felt like I better not sit down and eat this. I needed to keep going so I could get to the next place. So I just took the hamburger and ate it while I was walking. And as I was walking away from there, I saw this lady sitting out that I hadn't noticed before, and she was laying in a hammock, just kind of lazing there. And she waved at me with this big smile on her face. It was just like they were out there um, for the pilgrims. That's why they were there. I mean, it was right on the pilgrim road. Nothing else out there. They were there for us. So
I'm
it really,
loving your stories. So you wrote a book. Like, are all these stories in your book?
yeah, they are. Yeah, when I decided to write the book, I wanted to write a book about my teachings. Like I studied while Ron was sick, I studied for years and I had some teachings to teach from synthesizing all that information that I got. And so that's why I wanted to write the book. And then I was reluctant to be teachy. Maybe I was, I just didn't feel like an authority or something. And so I thought, well, I told all those things to people on the Camino, so I'll write my book about walking the Camino and telling people all those things, all my teachings. So that's why I wrote the book. And so when I did the outline for the book, I wrote my teachings down, and then after that, I wrote around who I told them to, and then that's how the stories came forward.
Oh, that's great. And what a nice, almost like a journal, perhaps, for you.
Yes, I had shared a lot with my friends on Facebook, so I had those things already written down. And then my daughter made me a WhatsApp with all my kids, my 5 kids, on it. And so I told them the gory details, the difficulties, the illnesses, all that stuff. I told my kids. So between the Facebook and the WhatsApp, and then I had all my pictures that I could go through and see what happened when. And the pictures kind of jogged my memory and made me think of a story, you know. And so, yeah, it's the adventures of Kathleen on the Camino for sure.
You said you used one word as we've been talking, it's been like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that happened. And oh, that's crazy. And oh, that's very cool. Uh, What were some of the difficulties? I mean,
Oh,
you were
well,
sick. I understand that. That would be
yeah.
huge.
And also just going to the bathroom. I mean, I'm an American. It's against the law to expose yourself in America. And I was in Europe and they are used to going in the bushes. I mean, those people, I don't know, but I was not. And so it was difficult for me. And so, like in the beginning, well, in the beginning, I would like, okay, there's some bushes over there. And I walk behind the bushes and I would see all this toilet paper around. And I'd be like, how terrible. People are just throwing their toilet paper here. And at first I thought, well, I'll pick it up. And then I thought, no, that's not a good idea. And so, but I had a plastic bag, so I used my little roll of toilet paper, but I put mine in my plastic. I didn't leave any toilet paper around, but I hated it because you had to like bury your butt to pee in the woods, and I don't like that. And so I met this woman, and she told me how to do it. So she said, well, like on the Camino, there are all these lean-tos. Like it's like a wall with a awning over it and a bench, and you can go in there and sit down. And I'm like, why would you have something like this without a bathroom? I just thought it was so silly, stupid, really. And then she told me, okay, Kathleen, what you do is you go behind the lean-to, lean your back against the wall. I mean, you just take down your underwear and get them out of the way, really, and lean against the wall and let it go, and then you use your toilet paper and pull them up. But um, I it was so much easier that way to lean against the wall and do it than to just do hunker down pose. And so that was really great when I learned that because like there are places over there where there is a wall and you could actually walk behind it and gracefully, get rid of your stuff. and and that was much better after I figured that out. So
That's interesting because as you were talking about going to the bathroom, I'm thinking, I have grumpy knees. Like
oh
I would have great difficulty, but if there's a wall to lean on, then I can probably handle it.
yeah, I have to tell you, I used to have arthritis in my knees. And I do not have arthritis in my knees anymore because while my husband was sick, this lady came to me and she wanted to tell me about negative ion clothing and bedding. And I asked her, well, will it help my husband with his Parkinson's disease? And she said, yes. And so even though I didn't have a lot of money, I just put it on my credit card and I got him all this stuff. But he refused to wear it. He wouldn't wear it. And so I thought, well, I'll just wear it myself. And I started wearing it. You have to wear a lot if you have a serious illness. And I just thought, well, I don't feel very good. My fingers are swollen, my knees hurt. And so I started wearing it on a Tuesday. By Sunday, I was actually able to kneel in church, and I hadn't done that in 3 years.
Wow.
And then 3 weeks later, no more pain, and I don't have arthritis anymore. So just have to tell you that.
Little aside, thank you.
Yes, but they're expensive. They're way expensive. But
Yeah.
you know what? You don't have to hurt.
Yeah,
And
no,
if
for
you
sure.
have money, it's great. If you don't have money, well, I mean, I didn't have money. I just put it on my card. But it's hard to do stuff for ourselves. Like I did it for my husband, but I don't think I would have bought it for myself, even though, I mean, I did not know it made arthritis go away. I didn't know that. And it was just a big surprise for me. But
And I'm
anyway,
sure a little bit of a phew could you spend all that money.
yeah, well, yeah. It, anyway,
Okay, tell us the name of your book.
the name of my book is Wisdom on the Camino, a spiritual journey sharing forgiveness and possibilities to inspire the rest of your life. And it's I self-published on Amazon. And anyway, it's by Kathleen Donnelly Israel. So you just go on Amazon and you look at Wisdom on the Camino, and there it is, my book. And so you can
Now,
get it like a paperback, or else you can get the digital copy. And like if you get the digital copy, please read it because I get paid per page. If people buy a digital copy, they pay me per page that people read.
oh, is that right? Well, that's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like a royalty.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Um, Now we had a little bit of a chat before we hit the record button. Your website is mostly about the book, and then
Yeah,
there's some other podcasts you've guested on. So let's start with what's your website? It's just your name, is that correct?
yeah. It's wisdomonthecamino.com. It,
Okay.
that's and then in the book, there's a gift for my readers. It's right across from the contents page, and it says, "Read this first." And you have to double opt in. I'm really sorry, but that's just the way it is nowadays. And so you can look. I put the pictures in chapters on the website so that you just go there and like if you're reading chapter one, you can click on chapter one and look at the pictures in chapter one while you're reading it.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going with that line of questioning was I had mentioned that I could not access the pictures and I was so excited to
So
access them. But there's a link in your book,
yeah, you read
which
the
allows
book.
us to, that's great. Oh, good to know.
Yeah, a lot of people don't see it. I can't believe they made it. The wording is very small in the book, and if I do another another printing, then I'll have them put it larger. It says read this first, but it's like 12-point type. So you can't really, it's not screaming at you or anything.
Yeah, yeah. Kathleen, our audience is mostly boomer women.
Mm-hmm.
Besides doing a pilgrimage, what do you say to them? What do you want them to consider as they journey through this phase of life?
You know, the Okay, so you can create in your life, you can create your own health in your life. So you don't have to be stuck. Like with the negative ion clothes, I created a situation where my legs actually work now. You know what I mean? And I can walk. Um, I have a problem with my foot. I haven't figured that one out yet. But I walked anyway. My hiking boots, you can walk with hiking boots on. It's a low skill, activity, one foot in front of the other. And what I think about doing the Camino at this time of my life is I'm not getting any younger. This is the youngest I will ever be. So I need to do stuff right now, right now. And like last week, I was in Paris. I was I was facilitating breathing at the Greg Braden seminar in Paris. That was such a great thing. You can just opportunities will come to you. Grab them, do it. It's like you don't have to wait. You can actually do it. The other thing I want to say is. In our stage of life, a lot of times people will do some worrying, like worry about how things could go wrong. But what worry is making up a dangerous or sad story and then believing in it. It's just a story. There's endless possibilities all the time. And it's really beneficial to make up a good story. Like I made up a good story. Yeah, I can go on the Camino. This is going to be great. Taking my guardian angels with me. Just kind of like create an image in your mind of how great things could turn out. When we've had some trauma in our life, it makes us kind of intent on thinking about how things could go wrong. But that's not helpful at all. And it's not even true. So you might as well make up a good story, and live into it. If things go wrong, you can clean up, afterwards. But if you make up a good story about how things can turn out okay, then the chances of things turning out okay is much greater than if you make up a story about how things are going to go wrong, because what we think about, we bring about. So I mean, that's one thing I learned from studying online, while Ron was sick, is possibility thinking. And it was difficult because I did have that trauma in my life, and I was really intent on protecting myself and not doing things because it might go wrong. That's where I was. And I told the sad story a lot in my life. And really people didn't want to be around me because I was like so full of my sad story. But now that I learned the importance of telling a good story, figuring out how things could go right, and then going with it, now things go right more for me. Number one. Number two, people aren't trying to get away from me because I have this sad story that I keep, saying. And yeah, it's just, I really recommend making up a good story. And years ago, when I was so full of my story of my sadness and how my dad was such a jerk and this, that, and the other thing. And somebody told me, you know what, you ought to make up a different story. And I said, well, that wouldn't be true, you know. But the fact is that the sad story of my life, the way my life unfolded for me, is just evidence of what happens when you have negative thinking. Negative thinking caused my negative life. My low vibration brought terrible things into me in my whole life. I mean, it wasn't just my childhood. And and I remember my husband, he would like, when I would tell my sad story, he would just be like, he would like take his hands and go, push them down, like, he wanted me to stop it. And it really hurt my feelings because I thought my story was important. But you know what? It just brought more sadness to me. And he was right. I should have stopped doing it, but I just didn't know. I didn't know that that was important. But it is. It is important to lose the sad story. Once you're 70 years old, you've been telling your sad story for long enough. You know what I mean? You need to like just notice something good and then build on it. And it takes a while. It takes a while to do it. It's a discipline, I would say, and it's worth it too, because our world, the way it is, there's a lot of low vibrational stuff going on, and some people would say, "Oh, you're just a Pollyanna," but you know what? Awful stuff isn't okay. We can keep a good thought and send out our good vibrations, and the collective consciousness will have our good vibration in it. It is important. It's not like something that you don't have to do. It's like something that is going to be really beneficial to the world and to our personal life too. So
that is so much gold because, especially at this time of life, we talk about self-care. And, when we talk about self-care, I think so often we talk about, like a spa day or, getting your hair done or making sure your clothes look nice, that sort of thing. But this is probably even more important self-care to recognize our sad story or our bad story, whatever it is, and figure out a way to create the happy story or the good story, the positive story. And then, as you say, live into it.
yeah, and it's free. Doesn't
Oh,
cost anything.
that's the perfect way to wrap. I love that. Oh, that's great. Okay, listeners, we talked about Kathleen's links earlier, and they will be in the show notes. Before we close today, I want to bring you up to speed on this podcast. It's called Two Boomer Women because it started out as a series of conversations between two specific boomer women, and I was one of them. Boomer 2 has since moved on to other adventures, but I love this podcast. The guests are all so amazing. I mean, today's proof positive. They all have their own stories, and the listeners, a diverse group that rarely speak to me, but I know you're out there. Life continues as is for December, but in January, the podcast will be rebranded as the Boomer Woman Podcast, and we'll move under my Boom with a Bang umbrella. BoomWithABang.com is undergoing major reconstruction, so please be patient as that all happens. If you have comments on today's show, please talk to us. If you're listening at twoboomerwomen.com, scroll to the bottom of the page and leave comments there. We can be found at Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeart, all those places that people listen to podcasts. Feel free to leave comments there, and please leave stars and reviews because they help us grow. Before you go, hit the subscribe or follow button, and you'll be notified about future interviews with more of my great guests. And share this episode with someone who needs inspiration as they travel their 60s, 70s, 80s. Or perhaps you'll share it with someone who'd make a great adventure companion for you as you take inspiration. Kathleen Donnelly Israel, thank you so much for being my guest on Two Boomer Women today and just sharing some great stories, but your insights at the end were just, gold. That's all I can say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Agnes. I really enjoyed being with you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of week.
I know you will too.